Hey everybody, it's Pastor Steve here, back with you after being gone on vacation for our Monday Minute for August the 3rd of 2020. I've been gone for a little over a week, and so the question that always comes back when you are finished with stuff like that is, what'd I miss? Well, as it turns out, there's a lot that can be missed if we are not paying attention here. And there's a lot of good things happening here at Newberg, even as we're still in this midst of a pandemic here. Our online vacation Bible school is still happening, and our volunteers and staff have done a lot of work to put that together. We're in our second week of that now. One thing I noticed when I came back was there are still a lot of packets for our students that haven't been picked up yet. Parents, I encourage you to come by and get those as you are able to use those materials, and follow our YouTube channel as we continue with that virtual vacation Bible school, and share it with your friends and family, and we'd love to have as many people participate. While we're talking about our YouTube channel, one of the things I missed this past week is we have reached over 100 subscribers to our YouTube channel now, not all of which are actual members, I'll put in quotes, here of Newberg Church. So that's a great milestone that we have done, and we continue to increase our online presence, which is so important in this time. A lot of us are missing getting together, and I'm going to share with you today that there are a couple of events that we have in the works for the month of August. We'll be releasing those later on this week, and those will include 2 outdoor worship opportunities that we'll have a chance to get together, and also to be able to celebrate communion together. I know that's something that we have been missing, and we now have an opportunity where we'll be able to do that. So please continue to look through those announcements, check your email, watch our social media on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and those announcements will come out, and we hope that everybody will have a chance for us to gather together, as we all are missing one another in various ways during this time. But what I wanted to reflect on after being away for a week was Paul's letter to the Philippians in the first chapter. And Paul opens up his letter by saying to the Philippian church, "I thank my God every time I remember you, constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for all of you, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day until now." That's Philippians chapter 1, verses 3 through 5 to begin with here. And while I have been away, things have continued. We've had a great sermon this past Sunday from Dr. Frank Dunbar, as we always get, and we're grateful for him and all of our other staff and volunteers who are able to help us out so that we can continue to do the things that we need to do to be church. But a lot of other things have been happening in the world in these last couple of weeks, and it always makes us stop and question. Whether it's the question of the pandemic, whether it's the question of fairness, or whether it's the question of what is God doing in the midst of this. And then that got me thinking to another question. It was a question that was asked several years ago, but it always keeps coming back into my mind. And it was a volunteer who had asked me that what did I think was the number one problem facing the United Methodist Church today. Now this was back about 15, 16, 17 years ago. And as I reflected upon it, I said back to her, I think the biggest challenge facing the United Methodist Church is being United Methodist and sharing what United Methodist belief is all about, and how that belief and how our heritage and who we are can actually help us, especially in times like this. See, people have been asking questions about God. People have been asking questions about how we can be faithful in the midst of a pandemic. What is God doing? Why is God doing this? What do you think? Is this something from the man upstairs? Is another question that I got. I won't get into the whole issues of assigning a gender to God, but I get the point, and hopefully you do as well. But I think one of the things that we tend to do is we want to assign blame to someone or something when things don't go our way. Now, it's easy to do when it comes to matters that are in our control. In fact, when we don't want to take responsibility for something, we try to pass it off onto somebody else. But particularly when we don't have an explanation, we want to find someone and blame someone who is responsible. And when it comes to issues of disease, pandemic, death, it's easy for us to turn and blame God. And I can understand why. Because as I said in a sermon a couple weeks ago, there's a lot of belief out there about who people think God is and what people think God actually does. But I think we as United Methodists, we as Wesleyans, have a unique perspective that we have not done a good job of sharing with the world, especially in recent times. We have this bent towards Calvinism, where we want to assign God as the divine puppet master who has already chosen who is saved and who isn't saved and who's going to get sick and who's not going to get sick, and the list can go on and on and on. That's not fair. That's not fair to people, and it's not fair to God. See, in the United Methodist Church, we as Wesleyans believe that we have a responsibility as God's people to spread holiness throughout the land, and sharing that holiness in terms of social holiness and following the teachings of Jesus himself, praying together, sharing together, and serving one another, and doing for the least of these. You hear me say that over and over and over again, and I won't stop saying it. Just as Paul says, you can't stop talking about the church in Philippi because of the great things that he's experienced with them. And then Paul says this about his present circumstances. Paul is in prison here in this time. And he says, most of the brothers and sisters, in verse 14, having been made confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, dare to speak a word with greater boldness and without fear. Then he says in verse 15, some proclaim Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. These proclaim Christ out of love, knowing that I have been put here for the defense of the gospel. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but intending to increase my suffering of my imprisonment. What does it matter? Just this, that Christ is proclaimed in every way, whether out of false motives or true, and in that I rejoice. And I will continue to rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and with the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. People can assign blame to God or assign consequences from God for a variety of things. Paul says that the most important thing is that we're talking about and glorifying God. But I think we as, again, United Methodists have the opportunity to share not those things that are out of malice or rivalry, but to share things out of the goodness of what God is doing in our lives. And knowing that God is the one who is not causing everything, but God is the one who is walking with us and calling to us and showing us how to be the best people that we can be and how we can fulfill the gospel in terms of serving our neighbor and loving one another. And that includes finding new ways to be able to share that message. But that message is clear that I think we need to share and embrace as United Methodists. That we believe that God loved us before we even know what love is, and that we even know how to ask for God's love and forgiveness. And it is not our asking in that, but our acceptance of what is already given that leads us onto a path, no matter how long or short that path might be in this world, to a greater good and to a greater building of the kingdom of God that we do not get to see fulfilled, but we pass on as good news, as an inheritance to others. So as we go into a new month here of August and we look to find new ways to be together both in person, safely done outside of course, and as we continue to reach new people, as well as those who have been a part of Newburgh for a long time through our online offerings, and really have to reimagine what it can look like in the fall to be church again. We know that things are going to have to be different. But in our Wesleyan heritage, John Wesley himself took circumstances that he was given and made the best of it for sharing the gospel, just like Paul has done here. And by doing that, he gave us a heritage that we can continue to follow and that we have gotten away from. But I think we can get back to that. And by getting back to those basics of meeting together in small groups like we can do over our computer on Zoom or other platforms, like we can watch in our social media and still have discussions, whether it is through that social media or other venues as well. By utilizing these things, we can continue to share that good news, to share and proclaim the gospel with others. And that's my hope for all of us in these weeks and months here to come. So this week, let us continue to persevere. Let's continue to share, and let's continue to grow as faithful followers of Jesus Christ. Let's continue to grow as United Methodists. And let's continue to show the world that things don't have to be the way that they are. But through our work, with God's help, walking alongside one another, we can make this world, even in the midst of a pandemic, a place that is better, a place that cares, and a place that shows God's love for everyone throughout the earth. God's blessings, and let's have a great week, and we'll see you next time.